This is The Playground. I'm your host, Eddie Llewellyn, and I gotta say, I am like so honored right now because I have one of my keyboard heroes here on the show, and I'm so glad to have him. Singer, songwriter, producer, musical director, piano virtuoso, musician extraordinaire. Let me see, can I think of anything else? Hold on, give me a second, give me a second.
You
How
are
about it for
off.
Chuckii Booker, ladies and gentlemen? Chuckii Booker, the man of the hour.
Hey, what's going on? Hey, man, thanks for having me on the playground, Eddie. I
Man,
appreciate it, man.
thank you so much for taking time to come out here and play with us, man. I
Man,
love it. And like I
come
was
on,
telling Chuckii
man.
before we started, this dude, I want to be like him when I grow up.
Oh,
let's,
please.
let's just start right there.
I think I told you it's the other way around. Let's not get twisted.
As I told you when we first met, it seemed like over the years I kind of followed your career and all that, and I loved like everything you did, and it seemed like everybody that I knew you, and I'm like, okay, how are you also blessed and I'm not? And finally, through a mutual friend, we were finally able to meet, and man, I can't tell you, I mean, what that day has done to me, and I never forgot that, and I mean, the fact that you're here, again, thank you so much.
Oh, no, the pleasure is all mine, and I just want to tell people who are listening to Playground, Eddie Llewellyn is one of my idols. Just let's keep it real. Coming up, and you know the whole Switch thing, and people do not realize how much Switch and Eddie and your style of playing and production has influenced me. So I just want to put that out there, that if it wasn't for the likes of you, Eddie, and Switch, and I wouldn't have had, you know, the sound that I had a chance to develop. So I appreciate that, man, and I love you for that, man.
My brother, I'm truly honored, man. I'm humbled. I mean, believe me.
Yeah.
So how are you doing? How's things going?
You know, everything's good, man. Even, you know, during, you know, even though it's the whole COVID-19 thing, you know, I've still, you know, just try to just stay busy and stay creative, man.
Gotcha.
You know, that's, for me, that's the most important thing, is that I stay creative amidst of whatever is going on, what problems may arise, man. You just stay creative, you know, to your highest level, you know. For me,
Gotcha.
you know, I know everybody's different, but for me, that's my thing. Is just, regardless, just stay uber creative as much as you can.
If you don't mind, let's start right there. I mean, what do you, when you say, you know, you stay creative and all that stuff, and that's what we all aspire to do, because I admit, and I even wrote a blog about it, this is hard. I mean, you know, especially for creative people. I mean, we're used to being free to do what we want and all that, and to do it when we want to do it, or to do it when we feel it, you know. So, I mean, like you said, you stay creative, you stay uber creative. I love that. How do you do it? I mean, do you have like a specific system, or you just like, hey, this is what I got to do today, or what? How do you do it?
No, I mean, I think for me, man, it's just a matter of you know, when you've done something for so long, it becomes a habitual. You know, it's like for me, just to, you know, people would call and say, hey, man, I need this kind of track, or I need this kind of sound, or man, do you have this? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I've always just tried to uplift myself, to push myself to do the best I can to produce and to come up with certain things. So when it's in times of craziness like now, I've used all of my, what's the word? I just use all of my experiences through the past and try to push through that and just say, hey, no matter what, just be creative and do the best you can. And that's what I use. I just use that inner, you know, that inner production, if you will, to just push me out to.
I got to say, that is so impressive, because I mean, everything you're talking about, I mean, in a perfect world, yeah, but I mean, we're living like in a totally different world, and like I said, that is so impressive that you still push through all the madness to do what you do.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's easy, because it's not, but it's definitely not that.
And as far as the artists that you work with, I mean, obviously they're handling as well.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That's, you know, as a producer, and I'm sure you can relate to this. It's a lot of people think production or being a producer is just all about the music, and it's not. You know, that's a very small.
Good point.
Yes, the very small percentage of it. It's about making the person you're working with feel comfortable about what they're doing. Because a lot of times you get, you know, believe it or not, and I know a lot of great singers who on the outside, you would say, oh man, this person can blow, they can sing. But when you get them in the recording studio, it's a whole nother ballgame. It's like sometimes their confidence may not be what you think because you hear their records from the past and like, wow, you know, this person's gonna come in and kill it. And depending on what side of the bed they woke up on and they go to work, you'll be like, wow, you know, so it's my job to make sure that you keep that confidence level up, you know.
And how do you do that? Because I mean, you work with some legends. You work with some greats there. I mean, how do you do that? How do you you got to come up to where they are, if that makes sense. I mean, not putting you down, but I mean, you know, these are like legends. I mean, how do you keep the intimidation factor low, if that makes sense?
You know, for me, it's just the energy that I give off that I.
Yeah, and you do give off a positive energy. That's for sure. Hey,
man, like no matter what, we're gonna kill the session, or we're gonna kill this song. It's just I'm not gonna. I refuse to take anything other than that. You know, and I let them, you know, feel that energy from me because that's what I'm really about. You know, I don't care if you're like a singer who we gotta punch every word like and he, but even if we do that, I don't care. I just know in my heart that it's gonna kill. That's how I get down, no matter
that's
what.
Awesome.
No matter what.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
I love it. And believe me, I told Chuckii before this interview that I'm going to be taking notes because it's stuff like that I personally need to hear too. You know, so I know that there are others that are out there like me because again, I mean, this whole COVID thing, it's slowed me down personally to a crawl, you know.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not easy. This is hard. This is hard.
It is.
And again, this is unprecedented. We've never been through a thing like this. And
Absolutely.
when we're talking about like creative people like us,
Absolutely.
it's like, okay, now how do we push through this? So everything you're saying, man, hold on, let me write it down.
You are crazy, Eddie.
I'm trying to be like you, like I said.
Man, no, man. You don't want to be like me.
So let me ask you. Let's go back to your early beginnings and all that, because I mean your history. You have quite a story here. So as far as like was piano like your first instrument, or is that how did piano come to be like your thing?
You know, piano came to me. My parents were musicians. They were, you know, my dad was a singer. He used to sing. He would play. My mother was a gospel and jazz pianist. So growing up, you know, it was just my uncle is a jazz flautist. You know, he played flute, and my other uncle played acoustic guitar. So, like I said, I grew up in a musically inclined family. So it was just a matter of time.
And you could tell the consummate musician that you are because you said he's a jazz flautist. He doesn't play flute.
Yeah,
he's a flautist.
Yeah, he's a flautist.
I'm telling you, the man is serious. This man is serious.
You know what? Some people do say some people.
No, I hear you. Nothing against them, right?
Yeah,
right.
Some people say flutist, but I mean, some people say flutist, but
I hear
flautist is someone who not only plays the flute, but they play flute-like instruments, like it could be a piccolo, it could be a bass flute, it could be, you know. So so you say flautist, it's almost like you know, like I would fish, and some people say, "Yeah, I'm out here swimming with the fishes." Like, no, that's not. You just say you swim with the fish, or look at all the polices. No, police.
Right. I
So
love it. You're absolutely right.
You know.
Right. And have you ever had anybody correct you? It's flutist. No.
I have. I actually have had people.
So have I.
But you know, tomato. Hey,
right. As long as we're talking about the same thing, we're all good.
Right. Exactly. Right.
So again, so you're at the beginning. Did somebody point you in that direction, or did you like, hey, I want to do that?
My mom had a upright piano. You know, I think, but I first started banging on a piano, I think when I was like 2.
Right.
Yeah. You know, she kind of just sat me down and she would just play some things. And
at 2 years old?
Yeah, 2. She like, you know, had those little toy pianos. I even have a picture on my Instagram. I have a picture when I was like 2. These little pianos. I'm just banging on it, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just, you know, and from that point on, by the time I was, I think 6 or 7, I was like playing piano. But then when I was like 10, my uncle my uncle Benjamin, he bought me a acoustic guitar, and
Okay.
from that point, I started getting into the string instruments and bass. And then I got a bass when I was 14, and,
Oh,
and
wow.
then I just started playing bass right there. I stopped playing keys, you know.
Wow, really?
I
Okay.
started got the bass, and then I started playing drums in church,
Hmm.
and I was just mostly just bass and drums
Okay.
until I think 17 or
Uh-huh.
18, when the keyboard player we had in our band left, and all the guys were like, "Hey man, you got to play keys from now. We got to, you know." So and then I just stuck with the keys, you know.
Really? Really? Now, were there lessons
Stuck with
involved,
the
or
keys.
you were self-taught, or?
No lessons. It was all by ear. My mom, you know, she played by ear.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so I never took lessons. People always think, oh, you know, your godfather, he taught. I'm like, no, my godfather never read. He didn't read music either. He's all
Okay.
by
Okay.
ear.
And
So,
and
yeah.
thank you for leaving that introduction to me. Okay, your godfather.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Do
No
tell.
problem. Yeah. Well, you know, I first met my
And
godfather.
that's why this story is like so awesome. I love this story. That so
Oh
anyway,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Your
Yeah.
godfather.
No. It's all good. No, my mother and Barry White's wife, Glodine, were and are best friends even till this day. They were best friends since they were children,
Mm-hmm.
like 6 or 7, and they've been best friends since then. And
Wow.
my mother was actually she was singing with Glodine and her sister and their other childhood friend
Right.
uh, since they were kids, and Barry met my godmother,
Mm-hmm.
and you know they ended up getting a record deal with the group Love Unlimited, which
Mm-hmm.
he
Mm-hmm.
started and which he created.
And
And
you
my
saw
mother,
all this.
I saw all of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And my
Mm-hmm.
mother was actually part of that group. But when it happened, my grandmother, you know, from the church, you know, she was like, "Hey, you're not gonna be going out there doing all that music," because they were young, you know, like
Right.
16, 17, 18. My grandmother was not having it. So she told my mother, "Hey, it's a
Uh-huh.
wrap. You guys can
Uh-huh.
be cool, be friends, but you're not going to be part of that."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So,
Uh-huh.
but they still remained friends. And then when Love Unlimited did get the record deal and Barry started producing them, yeah, Barry and my
Nice.
godmother, you know, they were together at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so Glodine had told Barry about, hey, Celestine, which is my mom, she said,
Mm-hmm.
Celestine's son, she said, he's really musically inclined and he needs direction. You know, I was only 10
At 10
at
years
the
old.
time. Yeah.
Okay.
And she told Barry, and Barry said, okay, yeah, I want to, you know, I want to see him. You know, I want to. So I'll never forget this as long as I live. But I lived at that point, we lived in San Pedro, in the
Mm-hmm.
Rancho San Pedro projects
Mm-hmm.
in Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, really crazy area, you know, to
Mm-hmm.
grow up in. But Barry came down to the hood just to meet me. It was like, you know,
Wow.
yeah, I
Uh-huh.
will never ever forget this
I'm
for as long as
sure.
I
I'm
live.
sure. Now,
And
is this kind of at the beginning, or I guess even
so
the beginning was like
this was
the
like in
height of his career?
'73. This was '73. So he
Okay,
was
so he's
like,
Barry
he
White,
was the man.
right?
Yeah, he was the
Uh-huh.
man. That's why
Uh-huh.
I said, what? Like, really?
Right.
You
Uh-huh.
know,
Hmm.
so he came down. This was '73.
Do you
I was
remember what you were doing at the time when he walks in? When you saw him?
Yeah, I was in the house because I knew he was coming. My mom said,
Oh, okay.
"Hey, Glow and Barry are going to come down." And
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"What? I'm like, Barry White? You mean the Barry White?" And said, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
I remember it was like a Saturday morning. It was like Saturday mid-morning, about 10:30, 11.
Mm-hmm.
All of a sudden, I'm in the house and I'm just like waiting because I was like, "Wow, I'm going to be Barry White." A lot of people
Okay.
don't realize that in '73, Barry was like larger than life. So
Right. And you mentioned Saturday morning. Were you watching Soul Train at the time while you were waiting, or what?
probably, probably. I don't quite remember, but yeah, it was. I was up, you know.
Got you.
And
Got you.
then I remember my friends who in the hood, they all ran to my door, knocked. It was about 10:30. No. They
Mm-hmm.
said, "Yo," I'm like, "What?" They go, yo, Barry White is outside. He's parked outside. I said, what? They said, yeah, he's got this long white Continental Mark IV with white skirts on it. And
that was my next question. That was my next question.
I was like, what?
He had the car?
No. He had a Continental Mark IV. It was clean. It was like, had the
and
skirts
white.
on it, white wall tires. I was like, what?
Right.
And my friends were tripping. And I could look through the front door, I had the screen light. I just opened it a little.
Right.
And I could see him walking up the stairs to our apartment. And all the kids were like, oh, you know, he was kind of like shaking their hands, kind of hugging, walking up. And by this time, my eyes are like, this
I'm
big.
sure. I'm sure.
White.
Right,
you know,
right.
Like, he walked in. He saw my mom. He said hi to my mom. Then he came over to me. And of course, you know, he's like, you must be Chuckii. You know, and I'm like, yeah. He said, how you doing? I said, I'm doing fine. I was cool. And then he said, Claudine tells me that you play the piano. I said, yeah, you know, I do. He said, you want to play something for me? I said, sure. So at that time, all I knew was like gospel songs. So I played a song called Witness for My Lord. And I played it, and he just kind of looked at me, and he was just grunting. He was like, ugh. You know, okay. You know,
right.
And then he asked me, do you know anything else? I said, yeah, you know, I know a couple other songs. I can't remember. I played a couple other songs. And then I remember he told Glow and my mom, he said, can I talk to y'all in the kitchen for a second? So they went in there and they were just talking. And I'm just sitting in the living room, just not, you know, they were talking. And then he came back and he says, hey, I want you to come up and, you know, just hang out with me at the house in the studio. And I was like,
nice. Wow.
Yeah, I was like, what? He was like, yeah.
And what age were you about that time?
Huh?
How old were you then?
I was 10.
How old? You were 10 years old.
10 years old. So he started inviting me up to the house, you know, and I was just, that was all the motivation I needed because like, it, you know, it was, that was it. That was it for me. From that point on, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. You know?
Wow. With that kind of inspiration, I mean, come on.
Yeah. You know? Immediately. I mean, I could have easily went and did art, you know, because I'm into like graphic arts and drawing and
really
that nature. Yeah.
Even now, you can see that's now.
I haven't really dabbled in it a lot. You know, as of the last 10, 15, 20 years, I just have not been so enthralled into music. But there was a point in high school where I was very serious about it, and I even had a scholarship to the Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, which I did just a couple of weeks, you know, there, and then
it's just not this.
Yeah, and my godfather called me and said, "Hey, I'm going on, you know, tour, you know, you come with me." So I left school, and that was it.
Really, at 10 years old?
Yeah, I was a rap. Well, this was when I got the scholarship. Of course, it was right after high school.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like 17, 18, yeah.
And your first experience on the road is with Barry White?
Yes. Yes.
Did you guys catch that? His first experience on the road is with the with the maestro himself, Barry White.
The maestro, yeah.
Wow. Now, did you play with him, or
yeah,
were you pretty much? Okay.
Yeah, I played with him. Yeah.
So talk about the Barry White University of Music.
Wow. It was
so
interesting.
you're like, I mean, you're like with orchestras. I mean, you're pretty much with the big orchestra and everything.
Yeah, he's got the orchestra behind. Yeah, the whole, you know, 43-piece orchestra.
Right.
It was, you know, rhythm section. Of course, I was part of the rhythm section, so that was in front of them. But yeah, so I had a chance to learn everything about string placement, you know, horns, you know, all these things was instilled in me at such a young age that it was easier for me once I got older. I understood it because I've been such a part of it, you know, for so long, you know, at an early age. So, but he took me around and he showed me things. And then there was a time that I lived with him in the recording studio. This is when I was older. I was like 21, 22 when I actually lived with him. And he had his studio above his main house. He had another house above his where he built a studio called Rise Studios.
All
And
right.
that's where I became like an engineer with, engineered all his work along with him, with his best friend Jack Perry at the time, who's also a crazy musician, producer, writer. So I just learned. I was just like I was like a sponge.
I was gonna say you took it all in. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
He's the one who taught me how to, take the two, do the tones, record tones, and I learned, the board and everything.
And sitting behind that board, I mean, at that age, I mean, that's got to be overwhelming. I mean, or was it not? I mean,
no, it wasn't overwhelming for me because of the fact that Barry sat me down and told me exactly, okay, see this one module here that has like the fader, pan. He said, just think of just one strip, but then you got 72 strips going across. They're all the same. Right. But it's just this one thing. If you learn that, then he said, then you learn a console. So, and he basically told me that kind of philosophy, which helped me, not be so overwhelmed by this giant, massive console, in front of you. And when I approached it like that, just one strip, you just learn this one strip, then you learn all the other strips are basically the same. And that's how he taught me. So
and that's such great advice right there. I mean, just focus on the one thing, because sometimes the big
just
picture can be overwhelming. Right.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Yeah, just your sends, cues, EQs, filters, then your pan pot fader. That's it.
And multiply that by 72 and you got it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. Now, had you gotten into songwriting at the time, or?
Oh yeah, I was writing songs when I was like 14, 15. I was already, Okay. I was taking 2 cassette tapes and I was recording one thing, and then when you're bouncing it.
You were bouncing, right.
I was doing all that like at 14, 15, man. Yeah, it was crazy.
How many cassette recorders?
I had 2 cassette recorders, but
for all of us old vets who remember that.
I would play and it was crazy because I would do the keyboard parts or the drum note. I'd do the drum because I had a little drum machine. I'd play the drum machine. Then played like a bass line or something, then record that while it's recording to the other one. I'm playing another, some key parts. I was doing that.
Got you.
For a minute.
So at going back a couple steps, were you playing with like local bands in your area at the time, or?
Yes, I had a couple. Yeah, I had local band. Oh, in fact, I had a band. We had a band called Sapphire. This is when I was like 15 or 16.
Sapphire. Okay.
Sapphire.
Is it spelled correctly?
Yeah, it's spelled correctly.
Okay. Just making sure.
Sapphire. Yep. It was correct. Okay. Yeah, because back then we like to change the.
Right. That's why I asked.
Yeah. No, it was. Yeah. No. In fact, no. I think no. Uh-oh. You know what? It wasn't spelled correctly. I think it was Saffire. Or was it Saphire?
I think it's SA. Let me try to get my phone out and see. How do you spell Sapphire again?
Is it PH? I think it's.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, Sapphire or something like that. You looking it up? Thank you.
Sapphire.
This is how long it's been for us. Let's see, Sapphire. Because again, the point is at the time we're trying to be creative even with the band name,
Yeah. Okay, it's Sappire.
You're right. Okay.
But we spelled it with 2 F's, so it wasn't correct. It wasn't correct.
Got you.
It wasn't. No.
But the point being fire, right? That was the emphasis.
Fire.
Got you. Okay.
And believe it or not, I was 15, and we used to play like at the local clubhouses, the local youth centers in town in San Pedro and Wilmington and Carson, California. So I remember I was 15, and we played up at this place called Toberman Center, which is like a youth center in San Pedro.
Okay.
And one of our singers, his name was Gary. Gary was so cool, man. He was one of our lead singers. his cousin that used to date Philip Ingram. I can't remember her name.
Okay.
So
Okay.
one day we were rehearsing up there, up at Toberman, and Gary said, "Hey man, I can't remember her name." He said, "But she's gonna come by and she's gonna bring Philip."
Wow.
And I was like, "From Sweden?" You know, I said,
okay.
That was my favorite girl. I was like, "Really?"
Wow.
So
okay.
we didn't believe it. We were like, we didn't believe it. You know, I was like, "Nah, it ain't gonna happen." So we're rehearsing, and lo and behold, she comes through, and there's Philip.
Wow.
And I'm like,
with all the hair.
Yeah,
you can't miss him.
He had the fur. He had his fur. So I just remember him, you know, Philip was playing keys, you know, and like, you know, kind of. And I remember we took a break, and he said, "Hey, whose bass is this?" I said, "Oh, that's our bass player at the time. His name was Victor." He said, "Oh, that's Victor's bass." He said, "Can I?" And he jumped on the bass, and he started. I'm like,
right.
I'm like, man, they really are switched. Like, it blew me away. Again, like I said, my childhood, you know, favorite group, and Philip is there. That blew me away. So that was I just wanted to tell that story.
Thank you.
that blew me away.
And you just tell that story. I just pictured the whole thing. I just pictured Philip picking up the bass and throwing his hair around. All that stuff,
he was killing it. He was killing it too.
Really
I was like, oh man.
And for me, it was a treat. I mean, to watch him pick that up and learn it like all those years. So it was like, man, something else.
Yeah, that's crazy, you know. And then he turns over. Then he says, "I heard you play bass too." I'm like, "Yeah, but he had it." I'm like, "But I'm not right-handed. I'm a lefty, so I couldn't play it." You know?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm a lefty. So.
Oh, okay. Little known fact for those who don't know, he's a lefty.
I play true left-handed guitar, bass. You know.
Got you. Okay. And you play piano with both hands, right?
Yes. Yes.
That's to the piano students out there. And I don't know. Have you taught piano at all?
You know what? I have not.
Okay. The only reason I ask, because I teach piano, and every once in a while I get that student that says, you know, my right hand is stronger, so, you know, my left hand is kind of weak, you know.
Gotcha.
And it's like trying to get them to understand, well, you still have to play with both hands.
You still have to play with both hands, yeah.
So yeah.
Yes,
so
piano is an ambidextrous instrument. So
there it is.
You have to play.
You have to.
You don't have to, but if you want to be, you know.
If you want to be Chuckii Booker, you have to play.
No. If you want to be Eddie Llewellyn, let's keep it real. If you want to be Eddie, you have to use both hands.
So I was going to ask you, because we're coming back to like the bands that you played with in the time, and you were writing. I mean, even then, did your bands? Did you use your music in the bands? I mean, were they open to using your music?
That didn't start until I got into like my next couple of bands after that. You know, because I jumped bands after that, one after the other. But then
because everybody had to have Chuckii in their band, right?
Well, I don't know about all of that, but it was just, you know, that, you know, I just wanted to. I was growing really fast, so I was outgrowing, you know, the bands that I was in until I got with this band called Something Special, which the musicians were really, really dope. And then from that point, I stayed with them for 2 or 3 years, and then I ran into this group called Tease.
Okay.
And then Tease was like, wow. Now these guys, so funky. I mean, funky beyond anything that you heard on their records. You know, live. They were a live band.
And they were funky on record.
Yeah, they were funky on record, but live, oh man, yeah, they were incredible.
Wow,
so that was my staple. That was like 1985, 86. Yeah,
cool.
85, 86.
So after that, how long after that did you break solo? Did you decide to go solo?
Did
something happen, or was it just time for you to make a move?
You know, I think at that time we just had with Tease, it was a lot of creative differences that I you know, I just didn't feel comfortable with. And I was always considered a sideman anyway. I really wasn't a part of the group. I was more of a hired gun. You know, but everybody knew me, you know, with them, but I was just a hired gun. So it was easy for me to just, you know, I kind of wanted to focus more on production and writing. So I left in 87 and hooked up with Gerald Albright. with Gerald Albright. And I started doing some touring with him and writing.
Well, you toured with Gerald?
Yeah, I toured with Gerald in '87.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I toured with Gerald. We did all over the place, man. I had fun. I learned a lot, you know, working with Gerald. But from
it's so funny, like listen to you. I mean, like some of the stories that you tell, and like the people that you met and all that stuff, that somehow Switch or me or maybe Philip, like that one time that we didn't cross paths like that.
Yeah.
I mean, because Barry White, Barry White and Switch were connected.
Absolutely. I know all about that.
Right. And then same with Gerald. Gerald and Switch were connected and all that stuff. And how we did.
I know. It's like, how do we not run into each other?
That is so funny. That is so funny.
Because I would have imagined I would have met you before I would have met Philip or anybody else, you know?
I was the homebody. I always stayed home. I didn't go.
Same here.
I should have. That's probably what it was. So
I'm a serious homebody, so I understand.
You said you were or not?
I am.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm a serious homebody, so I get it. Yeah.
Right. Right. So you're with Gerald and all that. So how did you and Gerald meet up?
I was working at a production company at that time. I was working in a production company in San Fernando Valley area of Los Angeles at a studio called Jam Power Records. And we did a lot of stuff there. It was kind of a small production company, but I was like one of the head writers and producers there. And we did that's where I really, I think, molded my sound and my production, working at this production company. And one of the engineers there, his name was Craig Burbage, was leaving to start his own studio in Glendale, California, called Air LA Studios. So he called me and said, look, you can stay here and just be in this little small production, but he says, I'm trying to do big things, and I want to see if you're interested in running with me, starting this studio and production and this whole 9 yards. And he had a backer. He had a manager named Raymond Shields who was also working with him.
Gotcha.
And Raymond was managing Gerald at the time. So when I connected with Craig and Raymond, Ray basically just said, hey, man, you got originals? Do you have a lot? I said, yeah, I do. I have a lot of originals, So I let him hear a couple of things. At that time, we had a cassette. And I had a demo on the other side of one of the tapes.
I love this story, by the way. This is real. This is real.
And
before you go any farther, if I can interject one thing, for those who don't know who Gerald Albright is, smooth jazz saxophonist. I mean, master. Yeah. And there's no way that you can turn on smooth jazz station without hearing anything from Gerald Albright. And I was just talking about as far as like how our paths did not connect. Gerald Albright, I think it was his first tour was with Switch.
Wow.
And Gerald was just, I mean, even at that age, like yourself, I mean, just a master on saxophone and all that stuff. So I just want to make sure that people understand who Gerald Albright is and how important he is to your story. So, I'm sorry. So anyway.
No, it's all good. No, Gerald is a complete monster, man. People just don't know how talented this dude is.
He's super talented and crazy too.
Yeah, and he's crazy, man. Gerald's crazy. Yeah. But we connected, through Raymond and Craig, and a lot of people also don't know that he is a monster on the bass as well.
Yes, that's right.
You're right. Absolutely incredible. I mean, and I knew of him, prior to that, because when I was touring with Tease, we opened up for Anita Baker on it was a Cool Jazz Festival in '86. We were opening up for Anita Baker, and Gerald was playing sax, and so they went in and he played sax, and then he switched off, and then he jumped on the bass when they were playing the song "Been So Long," and I was like, who is this dude, man? I mean, he's killing the bass, killing it. Like, wow. I mean, he jumped on the sax and then jumped on the, I'm like, oh, man, this dude. And then I ended up, like, a couple years later, I ended up, hanging out with him and then playing in his band, you know.
Wow. Okay.
And,
Okay.
But anyway, I had sent some cassettes in to him, you know, for Raymond, his manager, to listen to, and it was a bunch of instrumentals on side A. But I forgot on the other side, I had a demo of me singing one of my songs, and then that demo was "Don't You Know I Love You," which was on my first album. But it was a demo of me singing it on the, you know, on side B. So Ray calls me and says, "Yo, man, I love the instrumentals you did." He said, "But who's this dude singing, you know, on the other side?" There was a song called "Don't You Know I Love You." I'm like, Ray. I said, "Hey, don't listen to that, man, because I'm not a singer, dude. I'm just,
wow. You didn't regard yourself. You didn't regard yourself a singer at the time.
Heck no. I still don't. I don't.
Oh my
I
gosh.
really don't.
Needless to say, there's a whole bunch of us out here that disagree with that part. But anyway,
you can. But I'm just saying, for me, you know, being around, you know, growing up with so many and working with so many singers and you know people, I'm like, oh no, I can never be like, you know, like that. But I do. I mean, I could do enough to present a demo. You know, that's what I'm thinking. And Ray is like, no, bro. He said, we're gonna get you a record deal. And I was like, so I'm like automatically thrown into the fire as being an artist, and that's not what I wanted. I was
gonna say, because you're not looking for a record deal at that time.
No, I just want to be a producer and a writer. You know, I'm not trying to, you know, be an artist. I'm like, because I already know what that entails, how much work. It's crazy.
Right.
My godfather go through it. I've seen working with other artists. I'm like, oh heck no, I'm not gonna do that. But in this case, Ray kind of coerced me into it because he said, "Hey man, you can really showcase your production skills."
Wow.
You know, he's like, you know, you can be, you know, even though you may not be, yeah, exactly. You know, he's reeling me in. He said, "You can show your production skills." So and at that point, I still said no.
Wow.
I said no. So what he did was, he talked to Sylvia Rhodes, who was the head of Black Music in Atlantic at that time.
I know
Sylvia personally called me and said, look, she said, "Look, baby, we're gonna give you a record deal." She said, "Look what you have to do." She says, "I'll give you full production of doing whatever you want to do if you just work with a couple of artists that I have. I have a couple of artists that I want you to work with. I have a group from Pasadena called The Guys that I want you to work with." She says, "And if you can pull that off and make it happen, then," she says, "I'll let you produce and do whatever you want. But you're going to have to get a record deal, but I'll let you produce your own record." She said, because at first she wasn't going to let me do anything. And that's when I was like, no, because I want to be known as a producer, a musician, a writer. So this group, The Guys, ended up being this group called Troop. So, and I did their first, you know, did a couple of songs on their first and second album. And then once that popped, then...
And and the names of those songs, for those who, you know...
Well, the very first song, the two songs that I did on the first album were a song called "She's My Favorite Girl" and a song called "My Heart."
Oh, okay.
On the first album.
Okay.
But on the second one...
That's the one.
"All I Do Is Think of You" and "Spread My Wings."
There it is.
So
there it is.
Those two songs, I basically got my record deal.
Wow. And all I do is think of you. That was like written.
That was written by, I think it was Michael Lovesmith. Michael Lovesmith, and I'm sorry, I should know this, but
that's okay.
Yeah, he was the writer and producer back then for the Jacksons.
Okay.
On the Moving Violations album, I think it was Moving. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's Moving, but they did that song "All I Do Is Think of You," and that was one of my favorite songs back then as a kid. So I made that suggestion to, you know, Steve, who was the lead singer, Stephen Russell. I said, "I think you guys would do well if you did this song." And Steve looks at me and he's like, he goes, "Man, you won't believe this, but that's one of my favorite songs." And that was something that I thought, you know, we should do. So we kind of, you know, and we ended up doing it. And man,
And again, just go back. Your record deal, your personal record deal, is contingent on you doing a production for a couple of other artists.
Yes.
The one thing that the rest of the world is dying for. I want a record deal. I want a record deal.
Yeah,
well, we'll
and I
give
didn't
you
want
one
that.
if
Yeah,
you come and do this other thing, which you wanted to do anyway.
yeah, I wanted, yeah, exactly. So that's
Wow.
how they got. That's how Sylvia reeled me in.
And again, they
Yeah,
got you. They got you.
because at first she was like, "Oh, we'll give you a record deal, but we're gonna let somebody else produce it." I'm like, "Oh no."
Oh no, right.
Yeah, because she was like, you're not a named producer, you're not, blah blah blah. You don't have this, so we have to bring somebody in. I'm like, no, I can do this.
But wait a minute. Okay, we're gonna
I
bring
can
somebody
do
in
it.
to produce you while we let you
Yeah,
produce somebody
yeah,
else.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
and I was like, no. I already got, I did the troop stuff. Oh, I forgot.
Right.
I did the right stuff along with from Vanessa Williams. I played on
right.
that.
Right.
Yeah, I did
I
that.
forgot about that.
Yeah, so I had I had a little bit of clout, but I guess it just wasn't enough for Sylvia at the time. So, but it was cool. I was very adamant about it. I said, I can do this. And so she could tell, she's looking at my eyes like, oh, this kid he really thinks, so you know what? I'm going to just let him, just let him do it. Because I was that adamant about it.
Right.
I believed in myself that much.
And the result being a huge seller for you.
I was very fortunate, very lucky. Very
huge seller.
Amidst all of the talent that was out at that time, I was very, very lucky, very fortunate.
Yeah, man. And there was a lot of that. There was a lot at that time. Your first singles off of that album, your first singles, for those who don't remember.
Yeah, my first single off my album was "Turned Away." That was the first single, which was the last song I recorded on my album.
Really?
The very last song.
Wow. And that ended up being the hit. Wow. And that one is my jam. And then I'm gonna let you just keep going down the list. You know where we're getting to.
Yeah, I know.
Especially that high. I'm not going to put you on the. I'm not going to put you on the spot and have you sing that note for me. But anyway.
Yeah, especially this early now, isn't it?
Right.
Like, See, I could. Well, you want to play? Lucky. That was luck.
Okay. I'm good now. We're done.
Yeah, but that song was actually the biggest song I've ever done, and it only has 2 chords. That's what kills me. As a musician, I'm wanting to put all this stuff in it. And Sylvie was like, no, baby, just keep it right there. It's like, no changes, no nothing. That's it.
It's funny, like as far as what simplicity, I mean, simplicity is huge. It's
I
huge.
know, it works.
You would remember our song, you'd remember Switch's song, You Pull the Switch. 2 chords.
Oh, man.
2 chords.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite jams, man. You pull the switch. Yep.
And the groove on that one, all that stuff. So yeah, I completely get that the whole chord thing. Yep.
See, now you breaking up stuff. That groove is so underrated, man.
I think so. I'm with
Drum
you.
Beat.
I'm totally with you. Yep.
Man, I'm gonna pull after this. I'm gonna go pull it. I'm gonna jam that after this.
Well, credit Greg Wright and Ronnie Van were the writers on that one.
Ronnie V.
Yep. Now, they were the writers on that.
That's funny you mentioned that because I worked with Ronnie Van, and they'll say I worked at the production company in the Valley called Jam Power Records. Ronnie Van was there.
What?
Ronnie Van was he was there. He was like he was the staff guitar player, and writer. That's when I first met him. And he was telling me, yeah, man, I used to work on Switch. I was like, what?
Yep. Another, as you know, another monster guitarist and just all cool person. Really cool. Yep.
Yeah. Ronnie is so cool. I first met him there. Yeah, it's crazy.
Okay. Since we're here right now, and again, you've talked about oh man, all the different people that you worked with. We're going to go back to a huge artist back in the day. You're the music director for Janet Jackson.
Yes.
Right. I remember when that announcement was made. And again, I was like following your career and all that stuff. The first thing I thought, the best choice ever. the best choice ever. And I mean, we're talking like the, you know, the Greg Gaines and all that. And I mean, you were just, I mean, that show was crazy good. You know, the arrangements were awesome and all that. How did that come? I mean, how did that happen? I mean, and you're busy enough as it is.
Yeah. At that time, it came about. I mean, I knew Janet prior to that because Janet used to come up to the production company where I used to work at, again, in the San Fernando Valley. And her best friend at that time was a writer-singer named Melanie Andrews. They were really tight. Melanie co-wrote Let's Wait a While with her, you know, on the first Control record. So they were, you know, they were tight, and I met her through Melanie. And so we were friends. We were tight for a while. So I guess when Rhythm Nation came out and they were talking about doing the tour and whatnot, I got a call from Janet. And Janet said, hey, look, I'm getting ready to do a tour. And she says, I feel that you are the best candidate.
You get a call from Janet Jackson. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, she actually called me to come to Rhythm Nation opening party that they had in LA. Okay. So I went to that, and she approached me at the party and said, hey, Chuckii, blah, 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 you know, and then she asked me if I would be the musical director for the tour. And I said, okay, this is a great opportunity. I said, I'll tell you what, absolutely. But with one small insight.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah. And I said, if I could be the opening act.
And that's how that worked out.
That's how it worked out. And I said, and you know, I said, look, we'll have one band, 2 artists. That way you can save, you know, managers, and they'll be fine with that. We just use one band, both artists. And at that time, I had, you know, Turn Away was #1. Spread My Wings was climbing up the charts. All I Do Is Think of You had already went #1. Right Stuff has already went #1. So everything was all banging, was rolling for me right now at that point. So yeah, she said, you know, we'll get back to you on that. 2 days later, and said, yeah. But what it really comes
from. How long do we have to let's see. Okay.
I know. But I found out later on, because I was like, man, Janet really didn't know. Did she really know that I was that, you know, focused on the music? When it comes to find out, it was Jimmy and Terry that kind of told her, like, hey.
Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis.
Jimmy and Terry were like, no, that's the guy. I think they were going after, I think they were also looking at like Teddy Riley. Well, but Teddy was doing his own thing. Right. Too. God was really so. But I guess, you know, and I've had a little bit of running with Jimmy, you know, prior to that. Not a lot, but I guess he can see the similarities because Jimmy is a really big part of who I am as well. Minneapolis and that. Yeah. So I thank him for that because he's the one that made the suggestion, you know, to Janet to make that happen. So,
you know, another thing that I always thought was impressive about you, and as keyboardists, I mean, you know, just keeping up with like technology, and I mean, technology is like changing every day, you know, every day. So as you're like doing your thing with your you know, your act, you know, your personal act with your solo act, with the artists that you work with, and now you got to go out on tour and you got to make this happen like in real time, right? Yeah. Of course, we had MIDI going on and all that stuff, but by the same token, it's like you still got to like go around and do this and this. Yes. And I'm sure you contribute in the background vocals as well.
Absolutely. So, absolutely. The MCing and everything. Yeah.
Wow.
Doing the whole.
Yeah. How was that for you? I mean, you survived it, obviously, but I mean, how was that for you? I mean, that must have been crazy. And I mean, this is the time when Janet was like just.
She was larger than life. Yeah.
Totally. It was great, couple that with her brother too.
Yeah. I mean, it was at the very beginning was very tough because believe it or not, when we did that, our first show was in Miami, in Miami, Florida, And it was crazy because me as an opening act, I really didn't have that much time to work on my show because I was just so, you know, making sure Janet's show was like
naturally
super tight. And
mm-hmm.
we only had like 2 days to put my show together.
2 days.
But the guys that I had were just so, you know, hey, man, let's pull this, let's do this, let's step here, hey, and it'll come together as we go along. But I was surprised. We only had 2 days to put my show together. And it was only 30 minutes, but still.
It's right.
It was tight, you know. It came together.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. It speaks volumes of the guys that you have. I mean, they got to be completely dedicated and all that stuff. When you have like 2 days, I mean, come on.
2 days. 2 days.
And you guys pulled it off.
Yeah. Luckily, like I said, a lot of it wasn't on playback. It was all live, so it was cool.
Right, right.
It was mostly like the percussive, you know, certain things, and you know.
Right, right. And that's what I mean. Like everything had to be done. Everything is like in real time. I mean, there's no like, you know, automation. Yeah. There's not a lot of automation anyway.
No,
I mean, like there is now. You know, so
yeah, like now it's ridiculous. Right. Now it's crazy. But back then, oh man. You know, and we got a lot of flack, you know, even for Janet got a lot of flack, but people didn't realize all that stuff we were playing was live. All the musical instrumentation of it was 100% live. And I can say that, you know, with a straight face because, you know, especially our percussionist, man, Timbali, man, this dude had conventional percussion, but then he had the electronic percussion parts down. Wow. So all that, like on Rhythm Nation, that he was playing all of that on his electronic bands.
And the voice too. The voice too.
The voice on. He had a sample of that. He was playing all that live.
Wow.
He was playing all of that. All of that live on the pads.
That's awesome to hear because I mean, getting people to understand now, it's like, you know, live is it. I mean, you have to learn how to play your instrument.
Yeah,
learn how to play. Practice it. Get in there and do the work. Do the work. Because you can see the results are that. I mean, that's the result. That's the end result.
It's the result, man. You know? And you know, and at that time, that percussive thing was really heavy in Janet's music, so we really had to really emulate that. I mean, to a T, to make it happen. You know, and I'm a stickler for sounds as well, so I can hear
and you can tell.
I can dissect and say, hey, you play this, you play that. No, that's the wrong key sound. It's got to be a little bit deeper, or you know, I love to dissect music, man. I've always done that since I was a kid. So I had it pretty good. I could say that. I could pat myself on the back because the first day
as well,
of rehearsal, Jimmy and Terry came in and we played it back. Jimmy just looked at me and said, well, we ain't got to stay, you know, you can get out of here. And they bounced, you know.
Really?
They bounced. We just did one song. We did Rhythm Nation, and Jimmy just stood there and was looking. He just said, hey, we out. You know, like, we know what you're doing. So there ain't no reason for us to be, you know, we need to go make some more millions. So we out.
And they did, you know, they
bounced. You know?
So how are you as far, and we were just talking about as far as like technology and all that. Obviously you're like really into sound designing.
Absolutely. 100%.
Okay. How do you approach it? I mean, how do you get into that? I mean, how do you approach that? I mean, for the keyboardists that are coming up, how do you, man, there are so many questions inside the one. When you begin the sound design, how do you approach that?
Well, you know, I approach sound design from a from an analog standpoint, you know, growing up, you know, a lot of people, when I was coming up, it was always ADSR, you know, attack, release. So I always approached it from that aspect, no matter what type of tone or, you know, is coming through the signal, whether if it's sine, triangle, it doesn't matter. It's basically, I always approached it from an analog standpoint. Now you come up with granular synthesis and all these other different types of sine waves and digital waves and whatnot. No matter what it is, I'm going to always approach it from an analog standpoint because that's what I grew up in. So that's how I look at it. Just attack, decay, sustain, release, and just what you want as a producer, your preference for what you want the sound to be. But just like I said, for me, it works for me. I always approached it from an analog standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Always,
Mm-hmm. And that's where you
always.
always get that big sound. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I will
Mm-hmm.
never change that.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
ever.
Gotcha. Let me ask you, and this is pre-COVID, and maybe even in COVID now. I mean, we're switching reels here. As far as like where the business is concerned, where do you see the business from? I guess from the standpoint of like when you were like, I mean, you were, I say were. I mean, you still are. I mean, you go from Janet to currently you're working with Lionel, right? Lionel Richie.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Where do you see the business either heading or like now? How do you see the business now as relates to before?
Wow. This, that's gonna have to be a conversation offline between me and you.
Gotcha.
Because
Okay.
my thought process is a lot deeper that I'm sure a lot of people won't be able to understand if I just speak it out, because it's going to be such a long conversation.
Okay. Just so you know, I'm going to hold you to that conversation too.
Oh no, we're going to have that conversation. Trust me.
I'm so looking forward to it.
It's a lot deeper than what people realize it is, because it's a lot deeper than music. It's a lot deeper than the actual entertainment industry. Mm-hmm. It goes far beyond that, and it's a lot of, it has to do with control and monopolizing and things of that nature, which brings it on to a whole nother level that has nothing to do with music.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
We will have that conversation.
Okay.
So you know,
like I said, I'm holding you to it. I can't wait.
Yeah, we're going to have that conversation. But to be honest with you, everything changes, and it changes for within a specific reason. But I do not see the music industry going back to what it was. It will never be that. It will never be that way ever again, because of the what's been happening and how.
Now, when you say what's been happening, are you talking about because of like the whole COVID thing now, or even before that?
What's going on with COVID?
Okay, I agree with
the restrictions that they put on people, and on the entertainment industry because of social distancing and whatnot. That's a whole other story.
Right. Hey, I'm with you.
But it's not going to go back. I honestly don't think it's going to go back to that, unless certain implications are involved, and that's getting vaccinated and things of that nature. But again, that's a whole nother conversation.
I hear you.
It's a whole nother conversation.
Even in that small thing, I mean, that's a huge thing. I mean, the time that's going to take and all that stuff. I mean, we're talking literally. I'm with you, and we're going to have that conversation.
So those festivals and all that, that's done. That'll never happen again. And now you have these major companies such as like the AEG and the likes thereof. They're scrambling now, trying to, how can we make this money again? How can we do what we can without, what's going on right now? We can't make the money, so now they're reconstructing ways of making money and touring. And trust me, it's not going to be in our favor as musicians, as writers, and producers, because they want to maintain that the grip hold on the industry to monopolize and make money off of. They don't care about musicians. They don't care about artists. They don't care about.
And it's funny and that's the way it was before. I mean, even
that's how it was before.
So this is going to make it that much worse.
It's going to make it even worse.
Yep.
It's going to be, in fact, it's going to be 10 times as worse.
I agree.
Because now
totally agree.
You're going to get these artists who are big name artists, and they're used to maybe getting like $500,000 a show. And say, well, due to COVID, we can't have that many people in a time space, so that's going to just chop down everything. It's going to be now they're probably going to offer them maybe 100,000, maybe not even that, because they're not going to have the ticket sales. They're not going to have merchandising, because you have less people around. That means you're going to have less income. So everything is going to drop, and that's all by design. Believe it or not, it's all by design.
Wow.
They have all this time to put these things together to monopolize the industry, whatever they can get from it. That's what they're doing now. These people are not going to allow artists to make money like they used to. There will be a few. There will be a few. Chosen ones that will be able to do that.
Got you.
We know. We pretty sure we know who that's going to be. It's not going to be anybody that's
right.
of ours, But
I hear you. You're right.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. It's not going to be like that.
Yep.
We're going to take the biggest hit.
Yes. Like we are now. Like we are now.
Like we are now.
Yep. You're right.
Right. But guaranteed, though, people, like I said, I don't want to.
No, I understand.
Certain people that are going to get the same amount of money because they're a part of the system. So.
Got you.
Yeah.
Chuckii, I got a couple more questions because I've taken up so much of your time, and I can take up so much more of your time.
No problem.
And like I said, I'm going to hold you that conversation. I'm so looking forward to that conversation. I talked about like all the different people that you work with, and I mean your book is like vast as far as like the people that you work with. We talked about Janet Jackson and all them back then. Fast forward that to now, where you're with Lionel. What's it like to work with Lionel Richie?
Man. And
I caught his show. I was such a treat.
A
treat for me personally, as you know.
Thank you. Thank you, man.
Yeah, it was awesome. Great show. So so what's it like to work with Lionel? And again, you got a great cast of characters there too, backing you up.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great group of guys, man. They're funny guys too.
Yeah.
Really
as some of the Instagram posts show.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. If you go check out my Instagram posts, then you'll understand why I say they're funny, crazy guys. They're really funny. But working with Lionel, man, is the absolute best, man. He understands he understands the way music is supposed to be made and how it's made. He
does,
and he respects my intellect when it comes to that. He just lets me go for the most part. I mean, there's certain arrangements and certain things that might be a little bit over his head. So I try to, keep it toned down a little because, I still want to.
Right.
I still want to show that, hey, I can do the modern stuff today with all these kids now. And I've done that on a few things, but then he'll turn around and be like, hey, man, that's out of my musical brain. Really back in. So we got to keep it, because, his crowd, his audience, they're not into all of that, the church stuff, the church core, the crazy. Right. I sneak it in a little bit every now and then. He'll kind of, he'll just kind of, turn around. But for the most part, he lets me go.
Okay. Good.
I just try to keep it, close to the record as much as possible.
Got you. And you do. And again, you can tell. I mean, when you watch the shows, you can tell where Chuckii kind of like, okay, we're back here.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit,
Yeah, but just a little enough for everybody to catch, and then we're back to this again.
They were like,
awesome.
Okay.
It's awesome. Like I said, for me, it's a personal treat because there's Switch has a song called I Call Your Name.
Yeah.
One of our biggest hits, and Chuckii snuck that little bit in and caught me by surprise the first time I saw it. I was like,
I snuck it in.
I still have that too.
I snuck it in on Telling the Cell on.
Love it.
That's why I wanted you. I said, I want Eddie to check it out because that's a tribute, because that's part of my life. That's my life song, So I was happy that you were there to say, hey, did not forget.
Yes.
My
and then that whole transition, man, I love that whole transition. Won't you say it? Won't you say it?
Yeah.
Woo!
Thank you, man. Yeah.
And we can keep talking about that show. But anyway, let me ask you this. In closing, let me ask you this. What advice would you have to offer like those up and coming in the business? And do you have, first of all, do you have like those that you're kind of keeping an eye out on? Like, like there's some young cats that are coming up that you like.
Yeah. My advice, and I'm going to pass through what my godfather told me because it was the best advice that you could give anyone. When he told me, I'm always going to tell that to the up and coming artists, musicians, and it still holds true to this day, and it's always going to hold true. And I asked him one day, I was young, I think I was like 18, 19. This is when we had just finished touring And I said, God, Daddy, what's the best advice you can give to someone that's trying to get into the music business and up and coming? And he sat me down and he said, Chuckle up, I'm going to give you the best advice that you could ever receive. And he said, and that advice is, when you become a musician, singer, producer, the one thing that you must do in order to be successful, he said, is to be yourself. And what I mean by that is, don't try to go out and be something you're not because because that's the hot thing. Don't be doing this because somebody said, oh no, this is the cool thing to do. You do what's in your heart, what you honestly feel is going to uplift and motivate you as a singer, as a producer, as a musician. He said, it's got to come from here first. And he said, you got to keep it 100 with that. If you can't be real with yourself as a musician, he said, don't do it at all. He said, you get a lot of people out there that's doing it, just doing it because this is what's hot and blah, blah, blah. And then they fade out and die out. It's because they weren't real with themselves. He said, you got to stay true to who you are as an artist, as a producer. You keep that 100 with you, he says, the people will feel that energy coming from you and they'll want to work with you because they know, hey, if he's into it like that about himself and about his music and he's into it like that, then shit, I want to be there with him. I want to do that too. Mm-hmm. That's the best advice he ever gave me because to this day, I'm still here. You know what I'm saying? I'm still.
I was just going to say that, and you did it your way. I mean, you did it being true to yourself.
Did it my way. Mm-hmm. I didn't listen to somebody say, "Oh man, you need to put an orchestra hit right here because that's what's hot." No, I'm not feeling that. Mm-hmm. I'm not feeling. I don't want to put no guitar on this part. This is what I'm feeling. This is how I feel. Mm-hmm. So when you can elevate yourself to put it down the way that you want to do it. That's the best thing you can do because when people hear it, they'll feel that energy. They'll feel it. They'll know that, man, this dude is, I'm sure there's songs you've heard like, man, whoever, they really are feeling what they're doing. It's killing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what Barry was talking about. Mm-hmm. That part. Stay true. Don't be something you're not. Same thing with the rappers, you got robbed. Yeah, I was in the streets for 9 years. I got shot 45 times, and they ain't went through none of that, man. And that dude, that killed my godfather. Barry hated that, man. He said, man, come on, man.
Right.
Be real with yourself, bro.
And it's funny, those ones that you're talking about now, you could tell. The audience is not stupid. The audience is not dumb at all.
But that's exactly what you just said. That's exactly what he was talking about. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Keep it 100 with yourself, man. Mm-hmm, that's the best advice I can give to anybody coming up, because that is what's going to separate you from everybody else. It's your originality. You know what I'm saying? It's just you as an entity, as a producer, as a musician. You keep it 100 within yourself, man. And people, they'll know. They'll find out. They'll see it.
Gotcha.
They'll see it. Yeah.
Man, Chuckii. You know what? We're going to stop right there because that's the best way to close this show. No problem. First of all, thank you so much for doing this for me. I really appreciate it. It was an honor to have you on. All mine, man. I consider you a friend, a dear friend, and someone that I've always, that I've always looked up to, man. So the pleasure is all mine, but I appreciate. Likewise. Much love to you. Much love. Yeah. And for those who want, Chuckii, where can we find out what you're doing? Is there a website? Where can we keep up?
You can hit me at Chuckii Booker on Facebook, and on Instagram it's at Chuckii Booker.
Okay, and that's Chuckii, Chuckii.
Booker. Yeah, okay. 2 I's.
Make sure they understand that. Make sure they understand that.
2 K's, some people put 2 C's. Yeah, Chuckii.
Awesome. Yeah. Chuckii Booker, thank you so much again for playing on the playground with us. Really
Anytime, my brother. Anytime.
Really appreciate it. On the playground, where the players play. Again, my name is Eddie Llewellyn. I'm your host of the playground. with my guest, Chuckii Booker. Thank you again, Chuckii.
You got it anytime, man.
All right.